Why don't you talk a little bit? Let me see if I can get this. There's a boat about to ride right into your head.
A boat?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
So, tell me what today's date is.
April 26th. I think I'm getting... I think my tongue is getting away on my teeth. I keep calling these numbers and I have to say a lot of sixes.
Alright, you disregard the date on this. It's not actually April 23rd. It's
26th.
It's the 26th. But we couldn't get it programmed in, so it'll say the 21st, 1989. You are...
Trudy Palmer.
Actually, we knew that, but...
The mother of John, Kevin.
Otherwise known as Dick Cabot.
Daddy said get the boat out of there.
That's okay, they're hiding behind Mom's head.
Is this one of these candid camera things the table's going to go over?
Yeah,
Okay.
this would be on those America's Favorite Videos. Now, what we're going to talk about a little bit, I should actually, is we're going to talk a little bit about history, personal history. Going to try to see if we can unlock some old nasty memories. Going back, so what we want to eventually do is put together family history. We want to do this with Dad. We want to add in any of the grandparent history we can find. And then maybe eventually put this all in writing, see if we can get somebody to, what do you call it, transcribe that?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try to ask a few questions to cue Mom's memory. And if you find other things besides the questions I'm asking, just ramble with
Okay.
it. Any other things. We've been talking for the last couple of days about things like delivering Adrian at the hospital and those crazy old days. And if I forget to ask you stuff like that, just go. I have like a broad outline. I don't know enough about your past to ask you those questions. So we'll just take it from there.
Oh, thank you, honey.
Mm-hmm. Director, Mr. Director. So, I guess, what a logical first question would be, do you have any recollection of your first memory of like a snapshot in your mind?
I have a very definite first memory. I was in my father's arms in the house that they bought in Union, and I can remember they were out looking at a pantry, and couldn't have been 2.
Wow.
And I can remember that. That's
Really? So yeah, that's do you remember anything like your first tricycle, first time you ever rode a tricycle or a wagon or anything like that?
no. Played paper dolls a lot.
Really?
Cut out paper dolls.
Oh,
A little friend of mine, 2 doors down. We played all day long.
really? You remember her name?
Irene Smith, and she was
Do you
nasty.
remember her name?
Yeah. Well, I lived in that neighborhood all those years. And we were very good friends, but her mother always said, she was always bossing me around. And her mother was always saying, Irene, don't be so nasty. And Irene and I had freckles. And she wouldn't give me the secret formula for taking freckles off. And she always overpowered me until one day we were in our yard and I punched her in the stomach for some reason.
Really?
And she started to cry and said, well, you didn't have to hit me. So from then on, I was a king of the hill with
Good.
Irene.
Good. Did you ever have fights like that with your brothers and sisters?
My brother and I
and
once in a
sister.
while would get
What was your age differences?
My brother was 15 months difference between my brother and me.
15 months? Who's you older or he?
I was. And we were very close. And of course Winnie is 12 years, I'm 12 years older than Winnie, so.
You're 12 years older than her?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have any recollections of waking up in the night, in a nightmare or anything like that?
No.
Your mom coming to you or anything like that?
Mm-mm.
Do you remember like your first Christmas or any early Christmases?
Christmas was just a wonderful occasion. I don't know how old I was, but my father was an artist, and he went all out for Christmas, and he would decorate. That's why I always wanted to decorate trees for you kids the night before, but Santa Claus would do it, because
Yeah.
that was the biggest thrill to me.
Yeah.
And my father would hang twisted crepe paper, red and green, all around the living room, and we had a chandelier in the middle, and he would, so that was all.
Do you remember getting presents or anything like that?
Uh-huh. And I can remember that my brother and I would just sort of sneak down the stairs when they said, okay, it was time to come, you know, and we just, the tree and the decorations really took our eye. Mostly, gifts weren't plenty then because it was Depression time.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of, my father used to, like he would get trucks for my brother, or wagons, and paint them, you know, secondhand and paint them. And my brother got the bicycle, I never had a bicycle.
Right. Do you remember what you used for decoration on the trees? They didn't. Did you have electric lights like,
Oh,
like
sure.
at the same
Those,
time we do
yeah,
now?
those big electric lights.
They really haven't changed much. So.
No.
Huh.
All the Christmas, and you know, the silver rain.
What do you remember most about them from your real early ones, like him being an artist and being around?
Well, he was an artist who had to become an automobile mechanic to make money.
Yeah. So usually you have an image of, you know, your father or somebody as this big imposing figure. Was he playful with you guys when you were kids?
Yeah, we were a close family.
Yeah.
My mother was a disciplinarian, which I inherited from her. We always thought my father was an easy one to get around.
Yeah. Did your hand bother him?
Yeah, a little bit.
What did he look like? What did your father look like?
He was very good looking. I think I told you when he was playing baseball when he was 16, he was catching without a mask, and he had quite a Roman nose, pretty nose, and it got smashed, and they didn't take it to the doctors then, so the bridge of his nose was smashed. So over the years, it looked like he had I don't know whose nose it would be, but anyways, sort of spread on his face.
Did he have white hair, gray hair,
No,
black
he
hair?
had thinning hair, but I don't think it ever turned white. And I didn't see him in his later years.
And grandma, do you remember from like your real early recollections of her? What she was like, she looked like, she seemed like big and fat,
No,
thin, skinny.
no, average. She had gray hair by the time she was 24, so she used to do what they call henna your hair. She was always a redhead to me. And she was a very pretty lady. She was a very funny lady, very social, had a lot of friends. Played a lot of bridge. Most of her friends were crazy. I can remember grown-ups going roller skating at night. We lived on a street that had a hill. Oh, talking about nightmares, I did one time. My grandmother was living with us, and I must have been walking. I used to walk in my sleep, and my grandmother apparently was scolding me and telling me to get to bed, and I just was
Grandmother?
asleep.
Do you remember her?
My father's mother. Yeah, she lived to be 80 or 82. She died right after you were born.
She lived near you guys? Or with you guys?
She lived in a couple of towns away, yeah. And at the time, they were staying with her, she and my uncle, who was 10 or 12 years younger than my father. My brother and I hated him. He always squealed on us, everything we did.
Right.
We would tell him.
I remember some of that. What was your house like?
It was sort of a Dutch colonial house in a development neighborhood.
Yeah.
Had a big front porch, 6-room house, basement.
What do you like? To you as a little kid, did it seem like a big, huge place, or
No,
just some little cozy place?
it was a 3-bedroom house. My brother and I each had our own room.
Yeah. What was in the room? What was the room like?
Pretty, because my mother always had pretty curtains at the window, and my father was always painting and decorating.
What kind of furniture did you have? Like little play kid furniture or
No, hand-me-downs, mostly.
so it had like how about going to school, starting school? Do you remember like your first day of school?
Mm-hmm. Remember kindergarten?
Remember what we wear?
I can't remember what I wore.
Yeah.
I think I can almost remember the teacher's name, Miss Allen, I think.
Really? Did you like her for kindergarten?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was she nice? Like she was like one of your favorite teachers?
Mm-hmm.
Like kids come home, or were you scared of
Yeah,
your
I enjoyed
teachers?
school.
Really?
And it was a good long walk to school then. In fact, Gail went to the same school. And when I think about her 5 years old, walking from where we lived, and the town had gotten so grown up, so busy,
Gail went to school.
in the same kindergarten I
Yeah.
went to.
Yeah. Huh.
And I went there for first and second grade. And then I went transferred. They opened a Catholic school, and I went to Catholic school. Graduated from Catholic school.
Right. Would you used to walk to school with your brother or walk to school with your friends?
Mm-hmm. There weren't buses.
Did you go full day school? Half days?
Yeah, it's
Oh.
about 3 o'clock. 9 to 3, I think.
Working on the 3 R's.
Uh-huh.
You remember having a favorite subject or anything like that?
Yeah. English, math, and history I liked.
In first grade?
Oh, in first grade. No, I don't know what we did in first grade. I guess the spelling.
Yeah.
But I remember
You
in
get
Catholic
did you have
schools.
spelling bees and stuff?
Mm-hmm. In Catholic schools, you did.
How did
Catholic
you do?
school was big on spelling and English.
Did you go to school with the same kids in your neighborhood? Like keep the same friends? Did you meet other friends from other parts
Other
of
friends
town?
from other
It
parts of
seemed
town.
like that's weird.
Other
Like
friends from
meeting
other
friends
parts.
that aren't in your neighborhood when you first go.
Yeah.
It seems kind of
It's
like
funny, all the Catholic kids that lived in our neighborhood who went to public school, we called the Protestant.
the process.
We referred
Right?
to them as the Protestant kids.
I remember that. How about
My brother transferred to public school after 6th grade because he didn't do well in a structured class like.
No, sounds familiar. Do you have any old boyfriends or crush on anybody?
Oh yes.
And when you were like a little kid like that?
Yeah, even in first grade I can remember this boy. In fact, I can't even remember his name. I don't know why I liked him. He was fat. But I remember he gave me some kind of a necklace when I was in first grade.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember his name?
No. Yeah, Hofer. Last name was Hofer. I think it was Ernest Hofer. I think he became a policeman later on. That was in public school. And then I had a really nice boyfriend all through grammar school who was, he's now, I think he's a famous doctor in Chicago. And I think I told you the other night, his claim to fame was he could touch the tip of his nose with his tongue. And he was the smartest boy in the class.
What did it mean having a boyfriend? What did you do?
Just crushes in school, you know.
Yeah, I mean, did you walk home together? Or did you,
No, he didn't live near me.
did you just like look at him across the room? Or?
Yeah. We were always very friendly.
I remember, well, later on in school, like in our 5th or 6th grade, we'd ask a girl to go steady.
Really?
Yeah, and we didn't. We'd give a bracelet. Did you guys do any of that kind of stuff?
No. The nuns used to make fun of us. There was one boy I was talking to. I used to talk a lot in school, and his name was Vincent Squazzo. And the teacher, the nun, it was 8th grade. She made me sit with him and called us the lovers. Honeybees, she called us.
God.
And I was just talking to them. They were.
How did you have a good relationship with the nuns? Were they?
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine they didn't change too much from the time
No, I
you
had
were
good.
in school.
The only thing
time
that
I
drove
was-
me crazy was they would send for me, the nuns who had my brother, and said, "I want you to tell your mother this is what your brother does in class. He's supposed to be studying. He's making airplanes."
Were you afraid to step out of line with the nuns?
No, I was just always Mrs. Goody
Yeah.
Two Shoes.
Why? Why do you think? Just
That's the way I was. I did my homework. I liked I was always either first, second, or third smartest, and they used to set you according to your ranking in class. I just always had a responsibility that I had to do my work, which my brother didn't share.
Why? Because your parent, did you do it at all because you thought your parents, you'd get in trouble from your parents? Or
Parents didn't.
You just felt like you wanted to do that?
Yeah, parents didn't pressure us at all.
Why didn't you pass any of that on? Could have used some.
Well, I think feels like that.
Yeah, I guess. Did you have any like favorite music or styles or anything like that back in grammar school when you were a little kid?
Not so much grammar
Remember.
school, high school was.
Really, you didn't
It's
have
different.
like any kind of music that you like, nursery rhyme music or anything?
I just loved music. I used to dance all the time.
Like what was music like then? What kind of music?
Swing
did you like?
music, I guess.
That was when you were older, though.
No, in the 30s, late 30s, 40s. Jazz and swing. We used to listen to the Make Believe Ballroom all the time.
No, I mean like when you were real little in grammar school.
Music? I don't know. I took piano
Like
lessons
when
briefly.
we were kids, we had when we were real young, we had like the Beatles and stuff like that. That were radio was a different thing, I guess, and records and all.
I took piano lessons and from a nun, and I didn't have a piano. I used to have to practice on a neighbor that we called Aunt Clara, and it didn't work out because I didn't have a piano.
Clara.
And Uncle Dave.
God, I remember he had his leg amputated.
Mm-hmm,
Mentioned,
that's
right?
right.
Okay. They were around when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Jesus. Because I guess neighborhoods must have been a really different thing.
Very
you know?
stable. Everybody lived there a long time.
Yeah, everybody knew each other, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Nobody locked their doors. I think all the keys matched everybody's doors.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's I guess that's such must be like one of the biggest differences between back then and now.
Mm-hmm.
That, you just walk around a neighborhood, and I remember like everybody in Union knew, all the people in the neighborhood knew who I was and where I belonged and everything. And people were always stopping by and talking. Even the Scotch Plains, I remember everybody knew each other. Neighbors drinking beers with the neighbors and stuff. Boy.
One of the things they had, there was this store in A&P at the corner, and I think I told you this the other day, why I suffer from claustrophobia. They had these great big bread boxes like the size of a big coffin, and the dealers used to put their bakery products in it before the store opened. Can you imagine that today?
Yeah, right.
So the kids used to hide, and I was hiding in it, and the kids locked me in it. And I trace my claustrophobia. It's not too bad, but I trace it to that. Because when I had that scan last week, that MRI scan where they push you in, I really felt as if I was in a coffin. And got panicky.
Anything else like that?
The kids used to play softball in the street all night, and the parents would sit around and watch us.
Really? God, that's
Right.
great.
It was real family oriented. Parents
Were you-
didn't go out very much.
Were you a force in softball?
Yeah, I was good. I was a good athlete. I think our whole family is athletically inclined.
You weren't always the last one picked.
No. We used, with the bat. Put your hand on the bat.
Would you take that sprinkler, move it down to the next patch?
Yep.
Doesn't need to go that way. It just needs to go cover that part that way.
Towards the water.
Yeah. And this one.
Are you taking it?
Yeah. Did you shut that one off?
Yeah.
My mother and father were very loving. In fact, I used to be embarrassed as a kid. We'd come home and take her in his arms and kiss her.
Really? Wow.
But then I got a traveling job when I was in high school, and things went awry.
Between them?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why do you think that happened?
Well, I think he worked a lot for the government down in North Carolina, in the South. I just think he met up with people. My mother could see a change in him.
Really?
And his temperament changed. He got lose his temper. Put his hand through the wall one time. He got mad. Missed the beam by this much. He would have broken his hand.
How old were you then, you think?
In high school.
Yeah,
One of the things it always embarrassed me. My father was out of work at one time in high school, and there were got a job laying cable from the school out to the football field for his loudspeaker system. And every morning he had to go through this big drive with big rocks and macadam, and he had to cut through that. It was hard work, and all the guys would stand around and go da da dum dump every time he had to swing the axe. Or
Well, what was that? Why did they do that? What
Oh, that's the boat song. You know, he was slinging this axe and breaking up the ground, and so they just all stood around and.
They're the workers?
No, they were the students at school.
Really?
Doing it to my father, and I never let on it was my father. I was so embarrassed.
Oh, that must have felt so torturous.
Yeah, so wasn't that terrible for me to do that when he was just breaking his back to put food on his family's table?
No, I don't think it's terrible for you to do that as a kid. I mean, it's it seems like for me that the thing that I feel more sorry for the little girl who's like so afraid, that her father's out there, doing something that the other kids are laughing at. God.
Yeah, I was embarrassed.
That's the tough part.
But I shouldn't have been because everybody was out of work during those days.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it shouldn't have been. That's an adult, qualification. How long did that go on? That he's working around there?
Oh, it didn't take that long. Then he had to cut. The rest of the field was all dirt, and then he just dug this thing, laid the. He could do anything.
Did he know that you were there?
No. No. I used to hear the kids talk about it.
Did he used to get pissed off with the kids for doing that?
No, I don't think so. I think he laughed.
I guess that was that kind of time, unless you were very fortunate, you were just an odd jobber, huh? Trying to pick up an odd job.
Yeah, he eventually got a job. Told you at a machine shop and cut his finger off.
How did you guys? How could you afford to eat and stuff? I mean, what kind of food did you get to eat?
Good food. My mother was a good cook, and in the summertime she grew her own food. She loved to garden. You remember
Right.
Grandma loved to garden. And,
what kind of food was a staple diet? I always hear like during the Depression,
potatoes and
it's all potatoes.
a lot of
and,
soups.
and stuff that you could grow in your garden. So what did you do in the wintertime? What did you do in the wintertime?
I don't know. We always had good food. My father every Friday night always had his oysters. Oyster stew. And we had fish. Next food was cheaper too. Everything is
I
relative.
guess.
Used to do a lot of walking. There was a lot of things. All the things that the kids did, sports-wise, didn't cost money. We had a lot of hills around us, so we used to go
Yeah.
sleigh riding in the winter. There was toboggan field over at the golf course. We'd go tobogganing. Whole groups of kids, and we'd have taffy pulls. Of course, it's so unsophisticated, but funny.
Yeah, it's not Nintendo, I guess. But.
So we'd go to parties and have things like that. In high school, that was mostly parties at people's houses.
What about Okay, so
Before the crash.
before the earthquake, I was starting to ask you about
Church.
basically, where did you get religion?
Well, a Catholic school, and I was always in a lot of processions, little flower girls, when they had the exposition of the host and things, and I always enjoyed that. I really enjoyed church. I can remember Easter time, spending an hour a day, Holy Thursday, meditating.
Now,
I think
meditating.
praying.
Now we're going back to, first years of school,
In grammar school.
like first communion, that kind of stuff.
First communion.
I mean, when did you have to start going to church?
Oh,
When you start?
I don't
to
know when my
realize that-
parents first took me, but I know my brother and I made our communion together. I was 7 and he was 6. So I guess from then on we went to church. And they had 9 o'clock mass was for children only. Parents could go, but they had to stay in the back. And it was for the public school children stayed for the religious instruction, and the Catholic school kids didn't have to. But we were told by the priest that we'd be questioned the next day on what the sermon was. So everybody listened intently. But the sermons were always directed to the kids, and they were interesting. It's too bad churches aren't doing more of that.
Yeah. Did you have it at home? In the house? Was there...
We would say grace before meals, but not too much.
Did Grandma go to church a lot?
Oh, yeah.
She was a regular at church?
She and I used to go to Novenas.
Grandpa Leo, did he go to...
He was a Methodist who didn't go to church. Occasionally I would go to Methodist church with my girlfriend who was getting instructions and answer all the questions to the minister.
Yeah.
He would ask different questions to the kids, and I always knew the answers about religion. But it was a very close relationship between the minister of that church, who later became a bishop of the Methodist Church, and the priest. They were really good friends. Each attended the laying of cornerstones of churches and so forth. So my grandmother was a Methodist, not a religious person. That was my father's mother. And his father died when he was 11, so he didn't know too much about him.
He didn't know too much about his own father?
Well, yeah. I often wondered, where we were. He did say that we were in the United States, his family, for generations. And I think they were originally up in New York State. They settled. And as a child, I remember we had so much fun. We would go up to the country, which is now, I guess, above the Catskills someplace. And he had relatives who had farms. That was a big treat for us, go out with those kids on the farms and shoot.
Yeah.
See the cows milked and things like that.
That's like on summer vacations?
Just taking
Did that start to become a treat, being in school and looking forward to summer vacation?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. We always played at playgrounds. They always had playgrounds for kids, yeah.
Did you guys usually stay home during
Mm-hmm.
summer?
My grandmother had a place at the Jersey Shore, Ocean Grove, which is a Methodist community, and she rented out rooms in summer. And my Aunt Winnie had a place in Belmar, and she rented out rooms, so we always got a week or two. They would take the kids at different times.
Sorry, so here comes the Jersey Shore now.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you when you started going down there? I think that was a thing even before you played.
Oh, yeah, we used to go to a place called Siler's Beach, which was in the Raritan Bay, which was good swimming, and it's so polluted now. In fact, the ocean is polluted now down there. But we would always go. We'd go in a car. My Uncle Jim didn't have a car. No, Aunt Mary, Uncle Jim. And they had 3 children. My mother and father had 2. And
their kids were Jim Brady.
Jim Brady and Arlene and Mildred, who was a little retarded.
Right. Okay.
And we'd all go in one car, and they would have little chairs for the kids to sit on in the front, like the back seat. Little kids would fit in the chairs, and we would just go down for a day of swimming. And Uncle Jim loved to sing. They used to put out for a quarter or something all the modern songs that were popular, and everybody would sing. So there was no car radio, but we would have all our own fun. It's too bad.
Great.
And then we would swim. And sometimes there was so many jellyfish down there. We'd be sitting all week with jellyfish bites, really bad. But there was a great seafood restaurant, and we'd all eat. I remember my parents having pitchers of beer, the seafood. So that was fun. We did that quite a bit in the summertime.
Did you guys have a car?
We had a car.
How far is it?
Uncle Jim never had a car. Never had a car.
Wow. Did he not believe in him, or just never?
He was so conservative in saving his money, I think.
We've been, what do you call those Pennsylvania Dutch?
Pennsylvania Dutch.
What are they called? They don't believe in cars.
Oh,
telephones.
It'll come to me.
With the hexes on the
Mm-hmm.
front.
No, it wasn't anything like that. He just didn't want to spend money.
So, did you guys ever take any family trips together?
Who?
Your family, like long trips, or to other states or anything like that?
No, my grandmother lived at Ocean Grove, and we used to go down by train. That was always a treat.
Yeah.
Go,
Wow.
go down by train.
Did they ever send you kids
Spend
down
the
by
weekend.
yourselves?
My brother and I stayed alone. My mother was having an operation, and my grandmother was taking care of us, and it was in the wintertime. And he and I there was a lake between Bradley Beach and Ocean Grove, and we found an old rowboat. And he and I went out in it, and it started to sink. We got sopping wet. And on the beach at Bradley Beach, the fishermen used to have these great big fishing boats. They looked like big rowboats, but they were tremendous boats.
Oh yeah.
And they were deep. My brother and I put our socks and everything to dry in there. We were in the bottom of it. My grandmother must have been frantic because she was walking up and down the boardwalk saying, "Gertrude, Jackie." And we never let on where we were because we thought we'd get punished for being wet. We're lucky we didn't drown.
Yeah. Wow. Everybody that gets to be an adult is lucky they didn't die as a kid, I think.
And she was the best cook in the world. She cooked.
Grandma?
Grandma Odell, yeah.
Who
My
did you
other-
call her? Did you call her Grandma?
Grandma. But
So, and now, then you get out of school for Christmas. Did you guys
Christmas
get
was always
long
on.
vacations for
Yeah,
Christmas?
same. I think it's the same as the school system today.
Yeah.
Go back after New Year's.
Was there more snow back then, you think, during the wintertime?
I don't know whether it's because I was smaller, but lots more snow. Going to high school, I can remember walking with snowdrifts, but they'd cleared up to my shoulders.
Yeah. So that must have been great come Christmas time. When did you stop believing in Santa Claus? Remember?
I think when I overheard my parents talking something about gifts.
Really? Do you remember how old you were?
No, probably 7,
So
6
somewhere
or
in
7.
that
Yeah.
in that range. Wow. But it still must have been fun. And then, Winnie comes along later on. You were pretty old, I guess, when Winnie came along. It must have been fun to do Christmas for her. And you get to watch her pretend or believe
Right.
you were Santa
Yeah, that was
Claus.
fun.
That must be great. What movies when you were a kid? Did you ever get to go to the
I
movies?
used to go
see
to movies. It was 10 cents for kids. And if you sang on the stage, you got a free pass to go to movies. I sang on the stage every week. When I think I
Get
was
out in front of the people?
I was a shy kid. I can't
out.
believe I would get up on that stage. But it motivated me.
Yeah, 'cause you're Jewish.
And one time my cousin Arlene and Freddie were over. They used to visit us a lot. One lived in Irvington and Maplewood, which were surrounding towns, and they couldn't carry a tune. And the three of us got up and sang a trio. It was pretty bad.
What did you sing?
Huh?
What did you
I
sing?
kept, one was Goody Goody. Goody Goody. So you think that's someone? A barrel of dynamite. So.
I didn't know that song was that old. Excuse me for a second.
It was my mother's favorite song.
We have to break for this commercial. We'll be right back with Trudy Palmer. All right, now we were talking about going to the movies. Now, that's something I have a hard time believing that you would actually get up on a stage and sing
No.
for admittance, but hey, whatever. Did you used to be like
No,
terrified to walk up and sing in front of people?
I don't think so.
God, I would be.
But I was a very shy person, so I don't. As I said, the motivation was there. I got a free pass to go to the movies the next week. Then also, I used to help coach some girl with her math. Her mother would ask me, and then the mother would pay for our way to the movies on Sunday. That was grammar school, and I did have a boyfriend because I remember going. He used to put his arm around me in the movies.
What in grammar school? What was that like? Did they?
I can't even remember.
Remember?
I think he was a friend of her friend. I think she used to cover up, have me accompany her because she was meeting this guy all the time.
Who was that?
Eighth grade. Some
Friend of
fellas.
yours?
Yeah, the girl I was instructing in math, eighth grade. She used to come. She didn't know anything, and during a test, she'd go back and throw me notes. What's the answer to so and so?
Really? Oh, yeah, she's probably running a major corporation.
Probably.
What do you remember? Which were your favorite movies?
Showboat, I can remember, was one that I went to see
Showboat.
many times with Irene Dunn. I love the music in it. I still do. I watch it whenever they have it on.
Is that a musical?
Yes.
I guess
Oh,
so.
Jerome Kern wrote the music to it. Whoops. Wait a minute.
Any other favorite movies?
Yeah, I had a lot of them. Can't
Gone
remember.
with the Wind.
Hmm?
Gone with the Wind.
Oh, all that type of thing. 1939, there were 10 movies that were excellent. Destry Rides Again with Marlena Dietrich and Jimmy Stewart. Gone with the Wind. Meet Me in St. Louis, with Judy Garland.
Eddie Albert.
No. I've forgotten who played the lead. Margaret O'Brien was a little kid in it, who looked just like my sister Winnie. Little pigtails. It was a nice family movie. I like family movies, I guess. I liked.
Yeah. Well,
They used to make a lot of good family movies.
yeah. It was definitely pre-Lethal Weapon. Who are your favorite movie stars?
Well, when I was 10 years old, it was Clark Gable and Earl Flynn. I
Right.
remember that. Used to carry their pictures around.
Really?
It's funny about Gone with the Wind. I like Clark Gable from that. Adrian saw it when she was in high school, and she had pictures of Clark Gable all over her room.
Funny. Still, when we were kids, I was still a big flick.
And that's a book I read every once in a while because I enjoy it.
Anything else before you remember from before adolescence? That kind of stuff.
Just really a lot of family joy of doing
Really?
family things together.
That's
I can
nice.
remember one time at a dinner table, my brother hated onions, and my father said onions would grow a mustache. He wanted a mustache. So he ran down, and Jackie ate his onions, so he ran down to the basement and took some soot out of the furnace and just went like this across his lips. And said, "See, I told you it would grow a mustache."
God.
And my father used to make his own beer.
Really?
And we used to, on Sundays, that's another memory. We were allowed to have a little glass of beer with our meal, the malt and hops in it. And my brother and I had started this thing of cooking breakfast for our parents every morning, Sunday morning. And one time I was cooking and I had one of those, they call them like Indian blanket bathrobes now.
Mm-hmm.
And I did something over the stove and it went on fire. Went up in flames, and my brother quickly ran into the living room. We had a roll-up throw rugs, as you come in the door, and put me down and just rolled me up into the rug and put the fire out. That was fast thinking.
Whoa.
So it's like the movie with Jimmy Stewart. That one. What's the one that they're showing over and over again?
Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, how he
It wouldn't be around if it wasn't for.
his brother. He saved his brother's life. So you never know. But anyway, that was fun for us. We used to cook breakfast for them on Sunday morning.
What'd you
And
cook?
we'd all have, I guess, pancakes or eggs or something like that, juice. toast. That was
Wow.
Sunday morning breakfast.
Sun coming in through the kitchen windows in the
Mhm.
morning.
Mhm.
Really? It's been nice. What kind of like kitchen? Do you remember colors or
Yeah, I do.
tile and stuff?
They didn't have tile then. Linoleum floors. Stoves, the kind that you see in movies with the oven on the top and then the half burner. I remember when he was 3 years old, she came in. My mother had the burners on for some reason, and when he put her face over it and singed her, she had a little tiny little pink nose, but she singed her eyebrows and her eyelashes. And my mother asked her why she did it, and she said, "My nose was cold." I was getting hers. And we had windows over the kitchen table, double windows, which looked out on the house next door. And our houses were close together. And I can remember Jim Brady and his wife being over one night. We were playing cards or something at the table, and she said, "People next door can look in here. Don't you close the shades?" And I said, "I was next door to Mr. Wyman since I was 2."
Yeah, really.
I said, "We're like one family around here."
Is that the same house
Mm-hmm.
where we ended up? We were living when we were kids. Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
My mother had it made into a 2-family after Adrian was born.
Wow.
And she and Winnie lived upstairs, and so we had a 4-room. Added another room on down here.
Wow, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that 5 kids and Danny and I lived in 4 rooms.
No, my memories of that place are very. I remember a swinging door and a room and a crib.
You slept in a
kitchen
bunk bed.
table. Yeah.
And that's how it's time you were 18 months old. You and Billy.
Um, yeah. No, I didn't realize that was the same house. I thought you.
I lived in it all my life until we moved to Scotch Plains.
Wow.
So the neighbors were all very close. They all lived there the same length of time.
Right.
Then people like me got married and moved away, had kids. Well, some of us stayed there for a while with little kids, and those little kids played second, third generation. And you can see it. Some
When
of
did
the original
When did
people,
Winnie move out?
when she was 18, she married Al.
How old? How many kids were? How many of us were living in that house when she moved out?
Adrian,
Chronology by
Gail.
children.
I don't know how many years she's been married. Cindy is your age. So
Did Cindy right
33,
away?
Maybe another year, 34. 34 years from now is what? 90s.
Well, if Cindy
30s.
was born in '56, then maybe.
Probably 55.
Yeah. So you had Gal by the time.
Gail's, yeah, so I had Gail and Adrian. And Billy.
So now we move into adolescence. Was that as tough back then as it was later on with generation gaps and all that?
I don't think
becoming
so.
a teenager.
I don't think so. I had the closest. I can remember my mother one time always wanted me to get my hair cut, and I wanted it long. One time she came at me with a pair of shears, and I said, went screaming through the house, "No, don't cut my hair." But my father, I think I told you this story, that I'd gone to a school play and a dance, and a whole group of us walked one girl home. Everybody walked in those days, although there was a bus that you could take. And we walked her into the next town. It must have been miles and miles and miles. And we had to walk back, and I had a new pair of shoes called Spectators, black and white and high heels. And it was with a whole bunch of guys that we'd gone with. And my cousin Freddie was with me. And we dropped some other girl off someplace along the way. There were several, it was big groups. Kids always went in groups, which was nice. And I got home. It was really late. Must have been way after 2. And I had my cousin go in first. My father came tearing down at me. And he was accusing me of all sorts of things. And my mother said, "And Dopey here hands him her shoes." I said, "You don't believe me? Look at my shoes are all worn down." He hit me with them. She said he was so upset he was ready to call the police because he was afraid something had happened to me.
Yeah, I guess. That was my they have a lot of rules and expectations for your behavior that seemed unjust or unfair or too
No, of
confining.
course, as a kid, you always think everything is
Right.
unfair. My mother, as I say, was a disciplinarian.
Yeah. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear about like what you as a
As a
13,
little kid,
14-year-old thought of their rules.
um, as a little, as a little kid, my mother used to give us wax. She'd take like the little stick from the shades, and we'd say how many we're going to get. It depends on how still you hold. We'd get our wax. And one time she was punishing us, and she had us sitting in the kitchen. My grandmother was over. I don't know what we had done, but anyway, my grandmother thought we should be punished. Grandmother Odell, and my mother's out in the kitchen making us laugh, making funny faces. And my grandmother said, "Oh, you're a silly mother." But one time I was out with my mother, and a few years before she died, a whole group of us were out, all my aunts and cousins and so forth, just all the girls. And my mother said, no matter what she did to Trudy, she never rebelled. I said, no, I put water in your makeup. She almost died. She had some expensive makeup, and I don't know what she had scolded me for or done something to me. I just added water. She almost fell off the chair because I was Miss Goody Two-Shoes.
Really? Did you used to feel? Well, I guess it doesn't sound like you got in trouble that much.
I really didn't. The only trouble I used to get through at school was talking too much.
And so it sounds like they pretty much dealt with you with affection and humor, like you're all part of the same gang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I must say my brother and I got one time we were having a fight, and he took the kitchen broom and went to hit me with it, and it broke the fixture in the kitchen and the light.
She must have clobbered him.
Got in trouble. But then we used to try to cover up for each other when we do things like that.
Yeah. Do you have to be in by certain hours?
Oh yes. One time I set the clock. It was so unreasonable. I had to be in at 10 o'clock. So I did something to the clock.
How do you think they arrived at a time like 10 o'clock?
I don't know. Kids used to have to get in earlier, I guess. And
do you think they were afraid that there'd be trouble going on, or you might get snatched, or?
I don't think so. They just had rules, so I turned the clock back so I didn't have to. I did. Either I turned it back or something, but anyway, I got in an hour later than they thought. I was sneaky.
They couldn't figure out why they were so tired in the morning.
And one time I had a party in grammar school, and we had it down in the basement, and we had a lot of furniture down there. My mother kept coming down because this one couple kept putting a blanket over their head. They're playing kissing games and things like that. That was the big thing, playing kissing games.
Yeah, I bet.
So, but she was having a fit.
Well, that's good. Leads right into my next question. Do you remember having your first boyfriend? Not your first kid crush, but your first boyfriend that,
I have to say, it's Adrian's father.
Made your heart flutter.
I was 15 when I met him. He never made my heart flutter. I don't know what I saw.
Did you ever play kissing games and stuff like that
Sure.
when you were a kid?
Even in high school, that was a stupid thing.
I think that remained a staple.
We used to do a lot as teenagers, go roller skating in roller skating alleys. And my brother was an avid roller skater. He had his own skates in his bag and so forth. And he was good. It was dancing on skates. And that was fun. Of course, today there would be terrible places, I guess. And we used to go to football games and rallies and things like that,
Well, like with a date?
Groups.
No, you never went on a date?
Always in groups of people.
Did you ever go on a date with anybody? Like go to a movie or anything like that? Or
Yeah, Adrian's father. As I said, I was 15 when I started to date him.
How old is he?
19.
Was he in the service by then?
No.
That was before the war.
Hmm.
Where did you
Well,
meet
the war
him?
was on, but he wasn't drafted yet.
Where did you meet him?
At the used to go with a bunch of girls. We rented a house, and one of the girls' mother would chaperone us, and had
Wait,
an outhouse.
you girls by yourselves would rent a house?
Through the
Or
mothers,
the
yeah.
families would?
No, the girls. Oh, it was really cheap. Maybe $5 a week or something. My two cousins and several more. I belonged to a group of girls we called a sorority. I think there were 9 or 10 of us. And they had an outhouse. If you had to go to the bathroom during the night, we'd all hold hands, making a chain to go out. And the sink had a pump. It didn't have running water. We had to pump the water. It was a little thing, a place called Leonardo, which is on the Raritan.
I remember it.
And Doris Burke, her mother came with us. We had a really good time. And then we used to date the boys. And I can remember being on a motorcycle with some crazy guy. And I'll never do that again. He was nuts. We were going down this road, and people kept yelling to us something about the train, and the train was through and stopped, and he didn't see it till the last minute, so we had a scary time to get off that.
Who's he?
He was some guy in one of the groups. Adrian's father in a group.
Right.
And then we'd load up a car. There would be 10 or 12, and one time we rear-ended somebody, and they said, "Everybody out, hurry up before the police come." We all had to keep getting out of the car, and guys were sitting on the fender.
Well, you said you didn't, you said you used to date the guys. That you guys used to, what was a date like? Just go to the group, go to the ice cream parlor, you'd hold hands with one of the guys in your group or something?
Mm.
Really? So that must have been fun to be away
There was a
from.
couple guys that I liked that we used to go to the skating rink that I didn't like, that liked me, drove me crazy, always calling me up and so forth. I had boys who liked me once, not that I was a femme fatale, but I just wasn't interested in me.
Why? How come you weren't interested?
There was one boy when I went to high school, I used to call the Dutchman, and I used to go home for lunch, and he always held the door open for me and said hello to me, and I was too shy to say hello. He was gorgeous looking, and his name was Jerry DeBiser, and he left very early and joined the service while he was still in high school. A couple of boys did that. A couple of them were killed. But I saw him years later, and he was bald-headed, and not so good looking. But I really thought he was super.
How come you were shy? What do you mean?
I think I'm a late bloomer. Of course, after I had kids, and then I got involved in politics and school boards and things like that. I got out of that. I was shy.
What was shy like? I don't want to,
Well, I could have stopped and had a conversation with this guy because I know he wanted to talk to me, and I'd go home and I kept saying, "Open for me again." Also, I was on split sessions part of my high school. School got overcrowded, and the morning session went from 7:15 until 12:30, and then the afternoon session was 1-something until like 5:30 at night. So kids were getting out of school really late.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be on I told you I played field hockey and things like that, and played basketball.
You played basketball?
Well, they didn't have much of a basketball. I used to play that after school with some girls. Basketball.
What was that like?
Where
did you play? Outside in the parking lot or in a gym?
Oh, no, in school, in the gym.
Just play other schools?
We used to play
or
at night. No, just the same girls, just running around.
No, were you serious into basketball, or were waiting for the guys to come around?
No, we just wanted to play basketball. And I gave up field hockey when some of the girls lost their teeth. I thought, I'm not going to lose my teeth over this game.
Did you like sports? Now you've
I always liked
raised
sports.
a fairly athletic brood of children.
Yeah, I played. When we lived in Mountainside, I played on the ladies softball team.
Yeah. Excuse me for crawling around. Okay, hold on a second. say?
One of the things I should tell you about is my brother. It was decided that my parents could only afford to send the boy to college education. So they took him out of public school and put him in St. Benedict's Prep, which was a big,
Over north.
well-known school. And he got in all kinds of trouble, mostly disciplinary things. And so the brother sent for my mother one day because he was smoking. They used to give you demerits for smoking, and if you got so many demerits, you got kicked out. So they sent for my mother. Apparently he had the limit. And he said, I saw him in the courtyard, and I saw him smoking. And I told him not to move. He said, by the time I got there was no evidence of cigarette.
He ate it?
So on the way home, my mother said to him, okay, where'd you put the cigarette? He said, in my sock.
Did she mind him smoking?
Yeah, but I guess, he started when he was about 14. I remember boys would come up to me that I knew. One time I was at a big swimming pool, and they said, do you know your brother smokes? Everybody was always squealing on my brother to me. But then it wasn't so bad,
Yeah, right.
Wasn't.
That's what I was wondering when you were talking about that. I wonder what reason there was for not wanting a kid to smoke.
Well, they just didn't want it in the schools. Maybe the old schools could go up on fire and things like that. Yeah. So anyway, he left there and never finished high school. He got his, what do they call it when you go back and take a test?
Equivalency.
Equivalency.
Yeah.
Test.
We were starting to talk, we cut the tape so I could ask if this was alright. When we started talking about dating and first boyfriends and stuff like that, if you went to any dances and that kind of thing, to be blunt, what sex was like back then? What you thought, what kids, and yourself in particular, thought about sex, knew about sex, wondered about sex, or was curious about it. I wouldn't imagine you even had sex education in school. Did you? It was just nobody even talked about it. Huh?
It was a very sweet time, I guess.
Did you know, as a mid-teenager or so, how kids were made?
Oh yeah, I found that out when I was 11 years old from my girlfriends, which was a big shock. I used to ask my mother, where did babies come from? Where did babies come from? One day you'll know. One day you'll know.
Did you, did the girls and you and the girls talk about it, or did you know that they also did it for fun?
No, I don't think anybody did that. There were a couple girls got pregnant in high school.
Grown-ups did, and all, just, because it was a fun thing to do. What'd you feel?
I didn't know what a homosexual was till I was married. I was at work and somebody was talking about, I remember one time my father was dancing around and I said he was a fairy. My mother took me aside and said, you should never say that. I said, why? She said, well, that's a sex offender. She never told me what a homosexual was.
Yeah, well, what's a sex offender? Yeah, I'm always curious about it because it was such a different time, and we seemed to discover it, more in the '60s.
Which is too bad. Having all these problems these days.
Yeah,
Free sex.
Yeah, that's right. You forgot to tell us how it was complicated. But what did you and your girlfriends think about it? Did you think it was gross that people did
When
that?
I first, of course, I thought my mother and father were terrible.
Really?
Doing something like that.
Did you guys? Were you curious at all? Did you want to? Did you ever wonder? Or want to experience it for yourself?
No.
And you don't have to answer this. Before you got married, you said that you never had really had sex till you're married. What was the furthest you ever went on a date with somebody?
Oh, just passionate kissing, that's all.
No, what is passionate kissing?
Well,
Come on.
just with Adrian's father, because I'd known him for so long. But, let's see, I was 19 or 20 when I got married. So.
Yeah. So now what is that? You go out parking? Was that a big thing back then? Kids
Nobody
go out
had
parking?
cars, Jack. That
Yeah,
was
I
the
guess
other
so.
thing.
There you go.
You know, it was in the house. Mother and Daddy upstairs.
God, no wonder. Yeah, and one of the other reasons that I'm curious and in a biographical sense, one never thinks of one's mother
A sexy person.
as having sex. But no, they say that the Hasidic Jews, when they mate, a couple fornicate, they do it, but they cut a hole in the sheet, and they do it between a hole in the sheet.
Well, that's like bundling beds they used to have in the colonial time.
What was it?
Bundling beds. When you came to call on somebody, you could go to bed with them because it was so cold. And they
Okay.
put blankets, but there was a board down the middle.
Boy.
They talked about that when we saw Shakespeare's house, and they said apparently they did something else because she was pregnant when they got married.
Yeah. Bundling beds, my Now, so back to school. Sounds like you enjoyed high school.
Mm-hmm.
You liked going. Got good grades.
Yeah, I was either first or second on a roll. Probably could have been first. Because I could remember my mother telling me it was late to go to bed when I'd be doing projects. And I said, oh, you have 7 layers of energy, Mother, and I'm working on such and such a layer. She always made fun of me. But it was my, parents didn't tell me to do my homework. I just...
Right. Now, you would
I was competitive about
You would tell a
things.
high school girl today that she had to get good grades, but she had to be able to go to college and go out into the workforce. Why would you want to bother getting good grades back then?
Because I was competitive. I was just like
Simply
to get
because
good
it's
grades.
there and it's something to succeed at.
When I finished my freshman year, and my aunt and uncle, who were college graduates, had told my mother and father that the boys should have the education and I should have a commercial course. And I really
Which is
wanted...
like what, typing?
Yeah, shorthand, all
Okay.
that, bookkeeping. And I really wanted to take a college course, so my mother went over to see the principal with me. And the principal felt I'd have to either repeat the year, which I didn't want to do because all my friends would be going on. It would be too much for me to carry all the other subjects that I would need. But I was always sorry that I didn't change my course to take college. And that's why I had a terrible time with Adrian. I made her take a college course, and she really didn't want to go
What's
to college.
a college course?
College prep.
College prep
preparatory.
stuff.
They had general, and they commercial, college prep, and then shop, I think it was. I don't know what shop was
Right.
called. That was another.
Yeah, because that's one of the questions I wanted to get to.
And I did take courses in college. When I was working, I took all kinds of night courses.
Why, towards what end?
Well, I was doing a lot of computer work then. It used to be called calculators. It was a lot different from computers. I wanted to learn that.
To be able to
accountants courses and things like
get
that.
by in a business.
Yeah, I was. When I was very lucky because I went to work in the Prudential afterwards, and they did a lot of training. They trained me first before you take over. Then I left there and worked in a war place that was close by where I worked, and I just fell into the secretary's job of a big boss.
You did the secretary's job of what?
For a big boss in the company, and it was in the accounting department. And The woman whose job I took hated me forever afterwards. She was really nasty. One time I saw her up, she was blaming something. All the accountants' changes came in on accounts, and the president's office, and I distributed them. And she said there was a big mistake made because I hadn't distributed them. And, well, I saw her talking to my boss, and I thought, she's ripping me up the back. And I told her I was a shy person, but I went and stood next to her and listened to her. And the boss sent her back. And I said, now I'll tell you who sent it. It was this president's secretary who sent those notices out. And no, I hadn't sent them out. It was the president's. So she was blaming it on somebody who happened to be the president's secretary. That woman never got heard from again. The men used to come up to the accountant saying, you're the only one who ever handled her. She was such a witch. I just went up and stood next to her. I thought, she's talking about me. I better see what she's saying.
In school, did you feel the motivation to do well to please your parents?
No. I told her it was just my competition. I didn't want to be a dummy.
Really? I mean, it wasn't like, well, you never had to worry. I mean, I had to worry from report card time from my grades home. But that never factored into it?
The only thing that ever kept me from making first honor roll was science. I was really a jughead with science. Science didn't interest me at all.
Jughead?
Plus, we had a terrible science teacher who when I first started out as a freshman, she never should have been teaching science or experiments, so we used to explode in it. She was always coming with bandaged hands. And she finally went into industry. She was a genius, but she didn't know how to teach. But school was always fun for me. I just enjoyed school.
And after school activities?
Yeah, I was in a lot of different things that they had. I would have been in more. I don't know why I used to like to hurry home. But I remember I tried out for cheerleader on the stage again in front of the whole school.
God.
And I had the wrong shoes, and I said, hip, hip, hooray, or something, and my foot went sliding out from under me.
The old hip, hip, hooray.
Some crazy thing, and my foot slipped, and I was embarrassed, but I didn't make it.
Flash. Yeah.
But you know, Adrian tried out. Adrian never gave up. She tried out several times. She became a cheerleader.
Really?
Yeah. I just decided to heck with it. I was in class plays and things like that. They used to have
Were you really? In front of the school or just for the class?
No, for the school. Productions that they had. And they had something called circus. I even forget what that is. I think they did a lot of gymnastic type things. And I think I wrote for the school paper, or did something on the school paper. I can't remember.
You can't remember?
No.
What did you do? What would you do after school? What would be a typical day after school?
Go home and do homework.
Yeah.
Museums are getting out.
Do you want some of that sprinkler stuff? Put it on your collar, on your shirt collar.
Okay.
It's light. It's very bright. Let's see if I can do something about this. No, I'm sorry. What did you say? What would you do?
I can't remember what I did after school. I guess just pal around with my friends.
Did you have to go home and do chores
I always had chores to do.
around the house?
Yeah. I remember washing walls down a lot. My mother was great on washing down walls.
I was gonna say I would be upset if you.
Oh, really? In fact, we had this nice big front porch, which Daddy loved when we got married. You know, we could sit out there, and my father would put awnings. It was made a nice summer room. But before we could get the room out there, we had to wash all those clapboards from outside and wash the floors and all the time.
You didn't have any jobs? Did you ever have a job after school while you were still in high school?
It was hard to get jobs. You know what I used to do? Well, when I was in grammar school, my brother had a magazine called Liberty Magazine, and only boys could do it. And he never wanted to do it, so I got all the customers. I used to sell magazines. And then when I was in high school, I went out with some girl who was a representative, I think it was Ladies Home Journal, walked my feet off for days selling subscriptions to magazines. Weren't too many jobs.
No, this is still during the Depression period.
Mm-hmm. Then I worked in a 5 and 10 in the next town, like at Christmas time and at Easter time. I've always learned to read the backs of cards to see how much they cost. I automatically do it because I did it for so long, selling cards.
Now, were people shopping during the Depression, buying stuff? I always have such a bleak impression of the Depression, that people,
Oh yeah, you could buy things, Of course, I worked in a 5 and 10. It wasn't very, but it used to cost me money for bus to get over to the town and so forth. But all my cousins did it, all my girlfriends, they all worked in 5 and 10. For peanuts, I think it was 25 cents an hour. And I used to babysit.
Who'd you babysit for?
A couple people in the neighborhood, their kids. And my mother had a friend who I just liked so much, and I always felt sorry for her because she had 5 children. And I would work all day. She would get jobs to come in to work for the telephone company. I took care of all her kids, and I couldn't stand messy kitchen cabinets and things. I clean out all her closets, clean out her refrigerator, do all this work for $1 a day.
Wow. And did you feel more like you were doing it for a favor because she was?
Yeah, I really wanted to help her because that poor thing with 5 kids.
I see a developing pattern between you and your brother's newspaper job, magazine job. What did you like to wear? What kind of styles? If you couldn't afford the styles you wanted, what kind of styles did you want?
I can remember my mother making fun of me because I had a skirt that was reversed. It was black and then red lining underneath, and I used to pin part of the lining up with a pin, or sometimes I'd wear 2 different color socks.
Because that was the hip thing?
And everybody wore saddle shoes. And saddle shoes you could get at the cheap shoe stores, Miles. And you could tell if they were Miles shoes. They had little holes around the edges. The expensive shoes did not have those. Mm-hmm. And that was always a status symbol, and I never had the expensive shoes. But I was lucky I had shoes. During the Depression, when I was in grammar school, my father used to have to buy rubber soles in the 5 and 10 and used to glue them on the bottoms of our shoes.
As you outgrew the old soles? Or just as you
wore
wore
them through. And I remember the priest in our parish told the nuns that he wanted anybody who looked like they needed shoes or clothes to let him know. And I remember the family across the street, who had 5 children also, used to buy them their clothes quite a bit. And one time, school, and my brother was being attacked by all these boys. Of course, I always had a book bag full of books, and I just went to my brother's defense and kept swinging this bag over everybody's head. And I'm sitting on this one kid, they were brothers across the street, I'm punching the daylights out of him in the gutter. And look, my brother had gone. He left me. And I was with the one kid that was left, Larry. They all became good friends of mine too. But he went to run away from me, and I grabbed him. And he had one of these leather-like jackets with like a lambskin lining. And the jacket just ripped down the back. And I remember his mother coming over and saying, look what she did to my son's jacket. And we don't have any money for the jacket. But that reminded me of Gail used to fight your battles.
Yeah.
In Scotch Plains. Kids were attacking you, and she went, little skinny Gail went swinging in there. Just like her mother.
Yeah, but you stayed that way.
Wow.
Pretty much. Well, and I think that's your most practical attribute right now, is that
fighting.
That you're going to fight it through, and that's the thing that I like the most about you.
Also, I remember one time when I was in high school, I got locked out of my house, and I saw a light on next door, and the boy who I grew up with next door, Eddie Wyman, was in this kitchen playing with his dog, and he had just gotten in from a date. So I told him I was locked out, so he came over, and I had just said they never locked doors, apparently. So So he opened up the pantry window and got in the house and opened it. We kept throwing pebbles at my parents' window and they didn't wake up. But it was all like family. That's what I'm trying to convey, the whole
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Yeah, it was a nice time. Yeah, you know, like I said, my impressions of the Depression is just, sort of a Dust Bowl, mentality. Just, dingy, dirty. When you look at the old photographs, for one, they've all faded and everything looks.
Well, you look at pictures that I had from my childhood and we're all dressed up. I used to have little bows in my hair, big bows in my hair. Everybody got dressed. And my father was Beau Brummel. We used to go see my grandmother and walk on the boardwalk in Asbury Park. He always had white flannels and a navy jacket and a straw hat and a yellow tie. He really liked to dress.
Styling dude.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And we kind of touched on it a little bit before, but during those times, and when you were an adolescent, getting on in high school and that kind of thing. I mean, what did you see? As your future, what did you think you wanted to be? Did you have any dreams of what you wanted to do?
Originally, when I was in grammar school, I had spoken to a principal who was a very bright woman. She died while she was still teaching us.
Catholic grammar school?
Mm-hmm. Sister Casman. And my mother had gone over. We were just making plans for what we were going to do in high school. And she asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to be a lawyer. I think I would have been a good lawyer.
Yeah, no doubt.
But of course I didn't.
Now, is that sort of would it have had to have been a pipe dream at that time? And could a woman become a lawyer?
Oh, yes. You could become a lawyer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, what about as you got older, going through high school?
Well, then I worked, and then I got married young. I was 19.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what you did. But what did you want to do? What did you see? As a 14-year-old kid or whatever. Did you have something that you still wanted to grow up to be?
No, it was during the war, and everything was on hold during the war, pretty much. And everybody was getting married. So I just wanted to be married. And I enjoyed my children, enjoyed staying home with them, and I got involved in community things. I think when I was just 21, I ran for county committee woman as a Republican in an area that some woman had held. There was the two factions of the Republican Party, and she had the job like 30 years. Of course, I lost.
This is when?
When I was 21. And I just went around pushing doorbells, asking people to vote for me. As I say, I was always shy.
Mm-hmm.
Got me out of it. So it was my first.
Whatever possessed you to run for public office?
They asked me to. This group that was forming. I guess I got involved. I always like to get involved in political things. And I used to write letters about to the man who was the head of the about nuclear warfare. That was against nuclear warfare. When I was young.
What's his name? The guy that.
I forgot his name. It was a Jewish name. During
it was Hoppenmeyer or something. The guy that invented.
No. He was head of a department in the under the United States government. I guess, have always been a social activist. Not a real one, but I always...
Starting when, do you think?
Well, I guess before I was 21, because I got...
Issues back then
well, then,
you still had a job.
Well, in the town, the mayor had been mayor since ever I lived there. And it was a big political machine. And my father was politically active, and my mother used to beg him not to get involved. Got no thanks for it. But I remember when they used to have parades at night, they would, victory parades after all the cars would go through the town, and they'd all have some kind of, not sparklers, like red, what are those things with flames coming out of it, red torches or something.
Like flares.
That was always exciting. My mother and
was
father...
that after victories, or was that
victory.
to inspire?
after a victory. And my mother and father always canceled each other's vote out. He was Republican and she was Democrat. But she was sort of a political activist too.
Yeah, that's one of the things I eventually wanted to get to and ask you. Is what issue? Were there national issues and world issues that you were very interested in?
Not so much then. During the war was so remote to me, except the fact that everybody I knew was going off to war. I had some girlfriends who went into the service. She was nurses. But I always had jobs in the war industry, so everybody was involved in that war effort, so it was, that was what everybody was concentrating on.
Should I get that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back at this again. I think we left off at during the war, thinking about what was going on around you and all back then. And we started to talk. We talked about you running for office, as I remember.
When I was 21.
Yeah. I guess that's a little bit jumping ahead. And we'll come back to that. What I was kind of curious about, what I wanted to ask you about was, now when you're getting older, I want to ask what home life was like, what it's like life around the house. Certain, the rituals that you have around the house. Who does what? Who's cooking, bathing, how you eat your meals, that kind of stuff, going to church.
Well, right after school, I got a job working in a place, in an office. I think I told you. I became a secretary to a big boss. And it was, I had to commute on bus, which was just dreadful. Sometimes you'd be standing on the bottom step and the door would be right here. They packed everybody in. And my mother did the cooking because I worked. I got home late when it was dark. And it was just my sister because my brother was in the service. He signed himself in before he was old enough. And my mother found out about it and kept him from coming in. So as soon as he was 17, I think, he joined. I felt worse about him joining. I remember taking him down to the plane, to the airport, and crying when he left to go. He went out to Chicago and
You joined the Navy.
Joined the Navy. He was learning how to climb ropes to the side of the ship. And he fell a great distance and he was in the hospital for a while. And I think he just crushed some of the bones in his hand. But mostly it was just work. Sometimes I'd go out for dinner with some of the people at work. And when he was little. And I think, Winnie got rheumatic fever and was in the hospital for quite a while. She was about 6 or 7. And she was down in Newark where I worked, and I used to go see her.
How old was she?
6 or 7.
Okay, sorry about that.
And she one time I saw her and I thought, oh, she's going to heaven. She just looked so forlorn. Found out later these kids were all in a big ward, and they used to get up at night and run around and they'd pick up the babies and play with the babies.
So now you're still on Woolley Avenue.
Yes. While I was at work, I got a call one day not to go home, to go to my Aunt Winnie's house. And my father had left, and my mother picked up Winnie and I, and we lived with Aunt Winnie.
How old were you then?
17. I graduated when I was 17 or 18. But that house was always a lot of fun because Aunt Winnie was a really good cook, always had a lot of company. And her daughter, Peggy, lived there with her husband and baby. She had a big house. my mother and sister and I, my Uncle Charlie's German father, and the rest of her 3 kids. We all lived in
Wow.
one big house for a while till we went back to our house in Union.
And why did you go over there?
Because my father had left, I don't know, I guess had mistreated my mother, and my mother just left and stayed there till he left. And then we went back. I told you he had this traveling job and his personality changed. We were all glad to see him go because he was getting very violent. So I guess he was unhappy, and that's the way he was expressing it.
What do you mean by violent?
Well, we'd be eating dinner and something would upset him, and he'd slam his fist on the table and all the plates would fly up in the air. And one time he got angry about something. I think I told you, put his fist through the wall, put a big hole, just missed the beams. Could have broken his hand.
What would he go on the road for a period of time?
Oh, he'd be
then
gone
come
for
back?
months at a time. He worked for the Department of Agriculture. He'd come down to North Carolina. I don't know South Carolina, but Virginia. And he was foreman of a group that were spraying for the Japanese beetle, that was a real plague because kids used to get a quarter a bottle for catching Japanese beetles and turning them in.
Wow.
It was all over.
Wow. He always went to the same place, or did he have to rove around?
Oh,
did he have accounts that he would go visit, or just?
No, he just had
Try to-
different towns where he had to go. Spray Raleigh, Goldsboro, different towns in North Carolina. Probably Charlotte too.
Uh-huh.
Virginia, different towns.
And then how long would he be home when he came home?
I can't remember.
See, yeah, I never knew this. I never heard all this. And could you, when you were that young, could you recognize a problem between them?
Oh, how could you not help it? You know, I guess he just got dissatisfied with being married. He just
Really?
took it out that way.
Did he ever beat her?
No, wouldn't dare beat my mother.
She's probably beat him up. Or any of you guys, did he ever take it out on you guys?
No,
Did
he was very easygoing.
Stay affectionate with you guys?
He was an easygoing person because I said my mother was a disciplinarian. We always thought we could wrap him around our finger.
Did
Sounds like Billy.
huh?
Sounds like Billy on the phone.
Oh yeah. He hasn't called since he left, huh? Wow, that's a shame. Did you how did you guys feel about that when that was going on?
Well, as I said, it was a relief to us for him to be out of the picture at that point. And
It was just so tense when he was around.
And one time he met me at work. He was taking me for lunch, and I wanted to open up a credit account in one of the department stores. I wanted to buy a coat, and he said he would sign for me. And we were going up the store in the elevator. He said he would only sign it if I would get my mother to give him a divorce. So I said goodbye.
Wow.
Said I won't do that.
That's Billy's on the phone. Take a break here. Okay, so when did they ever get a final divorce or anything like that?
No. No, they're just separated. My mother, feeling she was Catholic, couldn't get a divorce.
Uh-huh.
And so they never did.
Did he ever cohabitate with anyone else?
Probably. I don't know. He lived down at the Jersey Shore where my grandmother lived, and he had a room in a rooming house. And I went down to see him a couple times. First of all, Daddy and I went down, which is jumping away.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
To have him sign over the house to us. He never paid any money. My mother paid all the mortgage payments. And we were buying the house for my mother. And but we still needed his signature. And so he gave it to us at that time. And then when Adrian and Billy were little, and I used to go to shore with my mother and Winnie, we'd go to Ocean Grove, rent some rooms. and I would take the kids over, and he finally said to my sister Winnie, "Why does she keep bringing those kids around?"
Sounds like he just got really bitter and
Yeah, I don't know why.
wow, that's weird. I remember going over to see him
Do you?
at least once.
Hmm.
He showed us how he could wiggle his ears.
He could, just like Josh.
Yeah.
And he also lost a thumb in a industry accident. And you know this thing how you can put your thumb like this, pull it away, and then he put his thumb up. The kids would die because there wouldn't be a thumb. There's a half a thumb there. He came, ate at our house for dinner. My mother would have him one time, and he said, "Oh, Margaret, you were always such a good cook. You made the best gravy in the world." A couple of times, you know, he would come back.
How did that feel, for you, to have him first go away and change? It sounded like he was such a warm person
Mm-hmm.
when you were young.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it bothered me.
Didn't bother you?
No,
Didn't hurt or anything having him?
no.
Why? Why do you suppose?
Because I was older, I was out working. You know, it wasn't like I was a kid. Maybe Winnie probably. It bothered Winnie.
Did she ever talk about him?
No. Because she was about 5 years old when they separated.
Yeah. Huh.
5 or 6. And he used to take her out regularly, you know, just never gave my mother much money for her or anything. But his mother lived in the next town, so he would pick her up and take her to his mother's house.
Uh-huh.
She had 2 houses. She lived next in the town next to us up in Elizabeth, and then later on she lived down at the Jersey Shore. And I really enjoyed staying with Aunt Winnie and Uncle Charlie, because everybody played pinochle in the house. Pinochle. We'd get so angry. We'd be playing for nickels. We had a good time.
Yeah, that's one of the other things I was going to ask you. Or your habits. What would you do? I mean, presumably you didn't have television or Nintendo to veg out in front of. So what would you do if you didn't have plans to go out with friends or go out and do something? What would you do around the house?
Oh, a lot of it was playing cards, talking, and
With
just. You mean with my mother and sister?
yeah, is that who?
I don't know. I went out a lot when I worked. Did things at night. Well, I played basketball at night, and I went to a couple of different schools at night and took courses.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept busy. You know, one of the things I forgot to tell when I was a kid that was so much fun was we all played cards in the summertime. Everybody had these porches, which were fixed up like an extra room, and all our fathers made root beer. Made their own root beer, which was so good. So we'd all bring a couple bottles of root beer, and that's where I really learned to play pinochle. Played it well. And then it was time to come home. Some of the mothers would say, "Jimmy, it's time to come home." But we took turns at our different houses.
Wow, that's so neat. Boy.
And I was thinking, I did have boyfriends in high school. I forgot about it. I went with 2 boys who were twins, fraternal twins, and one was a football player.
What, with both of them at the same
Yeah,
time?
different. Well, we'd all go out on dates together. And George was the one I used to go to proms with. George Green. He was really big. He played football. He was a nice guy. I think he's dead. I think he was dead at my 20th class reunion.
Huh.
And we always, after a date, had to go pick up his mother, who went to every bingo game around, and she always had tons of things that she won.
From bingo.
Bingo.
That's fun. All right, then you graduate from high school. Was that a pretty proud thing for you?
I didn't get any awards or anything.
Well, did it make you feel good to graduate?
Mm-hmm.
Proud.
Yeah. I was wishing I went to college. I got a lot of letters from different colleges I had applied to, but I didn't have enough credits because I took this commercial course. One of the things about me that surprised a lot of people is I'm not shy, but I'm sort of quiet, but I'm very aggressive. And when I, worked on campaigns, they were all really surprised that, gee, you don't come across.
Well, that's like getting into the fight for Jack's fight, you know.
And another thing, when my brother and I would get in trouble, I could talk my way out of it so fast. And he always, my sister said the same thing, reminded of Jackie Gleason, the poor soul. He was always slow getting anything out of him. Talk my way out of something.
That's good. I was going to ask you that about like getting away with stuff, sneaking in, sneaking out.
The only time was that
like
one party that I told you about where I set the clock. I thought it was terrible. I had to be home so early.
Really?
So I turned the clock when they didn't know it.
Did you guys ever do any mischievous stuff like, that you weren't supposed to do, but not just like sneaking out and going places, but or something?
Not
like
me. I was Miss Goody Two Shoes. My
Really?
brother did. My brother stole my mother's car when. So my mother, everybody in the town knew everybody. She called the police and they had them pick him up. She said, put him in jail. Give him a scare. Because they didn't, And then he told us much later, my Aunt Winnie she then moved to Union. And she was having a party. And he and his friends came in. I don't know how they did it, but they got the cars started. Went joyriding in the guest car. He used to do a lot of things to get in trouble.
But I don't guess that you would have been much for sneaking booze. Did Grandma keep booze around the house?
Yeah, I guess they did. No, I wasn't interested in that. In fact, when I was 17, I had a party. When I was going with Adrian's father, and a whole group came. There were older guys, and my father said I could have the party, but he said no drinking. And there were lots of kids there, lots of people. Well, garage, and they got drunk, and I was so upset that they were doing this, and this one fellow got really sick. And they kept trying to hide it. My father found all those bottles. My brother was at the party too, but he didn't drink them. But
He didn't drink?
no. I got in trouble because these guys did this, and I was so panicky, saying, "Get out of my house! Get out of my house!" I think it was a New Year's Eve party.
Yeah. How did you perceive yourself back then? How did you?
I was always sure of myself, with confidence.
Did you think you were pretty? Did you think you?
I was really pretty.
You say that now, but did you think so then?
Yeah.
Did you know you were pretty then? Dialed up, know the boys would be looking at you.
Well, I don't know.
Come on.
I did have a lot of boys who liked me, but I just never once studied, except I say those twin boys, and then Adrian's father.
Whom you met when you were 15.
Mm-hmm.
And how old were you when you married him?
19.
So
He was working in New York City.
how often did you see him?
Not often, because he lived down at the Jersey Shore. And I remember one time he came up to visit, and my father was driving us back to the train station. He had to get a train, and he saw us smooching in the back and teased me. And then he got really upset. He didn't want me to go with him. And I said, why? He said, because he's not Catholic. And my father was a Methodist who really had no religion. He said, and he's going to, it's going to be a problem with you. Which I said, oh, poo-poo. And we were engaged, and he went to his brother's wedding, and he came back and said he couldn't marry me because I was Catholic. So I guess I did a lot of crying, and of course I was working then. And my mother told my brother when he came in that I was upset. He'd been out. He used to roller skate all the time, roller skate rinks. He was sort of like a champion roller skater.
Who, Ben?
My brother.
Okay.
So my brother came in. He gave my mother money because he worked then, and said, "Buy her something nice." So he was really close to me. Buy her something that she likes. So then Dan came around. Said he was sorry. Shouldn't have married. Big mistake. But then I wouldn't have had Adrian and Billy.
How old were you when you got engaged?
Good question. probably 18.
So you were engaged all that while.
And I remember his folks lived out in Brooklyn in a nice area, and they were having, either she was Princess Juliana, and then became Queen Juliana, was coming to some kind of they were Dutch, some kind of an affair, and they wanted me to come for a weekend and to meet this Princess Juliana. And my father wouldn't let me go. Said it wasn't decent to go stay at somebody else's house. I said, Mother and Father are going to be there. Wouldn't let me go. So I never got to meet the princess.
Just as well. So you didn't. Did you ever? Were you always exclusive with him from the time you started going with him to get married? Did you guys ever break up, make up, go out, go study with other people, or go,
No, but as I said, I went with these boys in high school that I went to proms with. I went to a prom with him too. A senior prom, I guess, with my cousin Arlene and Charlie Hyman. We went out in Charlie's $5 Ford. Went to the Meadowbrook where Frank Sinatra was singing and Tommy Dorsey was playing after our school prom.
You and somebody else other than your fiance?
No, I went with him, Adrian's father, and my
Wait, you went to
cousin
another prom with someone else? You went to another prom with someone else, you said?
Oh, when I was a junior. So that boy I told you played football.
Now, how did you see marriage?
Everybody was getting married. It was during the war.
Thing to do? Or,
Yeah, it was. He was stationed.
Yeah, that's not so far. It doesn't sound like it was a way to get out of the house or anything
No.
like that.
In fact, my mother said to me one time, she said, I don't want you not to get married if you want to get married because you think you have to stay home and help support me. I used to turn all my money over to my mother. Occasionally I'd keep money to buy a purse or something, but all my pay went to my mother. And so it was my mother who really... And then Marge, who I said lived on that street. And I remember talking to her before I got married, maybe the week before. I said, I don't think I want to get married. And she said, well, what are you going to do now? Because all the wedding... She said, there's always divorce, Trudy.
So were you at all excited about going and playing house, so to say, moving into a place?
No, because I stayed with my mother.
Since he was in the service?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, I guess.
Everybody was doing it. Yeah.
Half getting married halfway. Huh?
Mm-hmm. You see the pictures we took in Ireland, all the green fields came out yellow
On the
on the tape.
on tape, really?
It must have been when I went through customs.
They ruined the tape,
they ruined
through
the tape.
the X-ray stuff, yeah. Okay.
Do you want me to speed this up?
No. I think that God, we want to get all the detail we can, and we'll filter through it. Eventually, I was saying what I'd like to do eventually is take it and edit it out. In some places, we were talking about people or times and stuff. We go through, get the old black and white pictures, and take video of close-ups of the pictures themselves. However, they do that and put those in over the sound. That'd be pretty cool. And then and this is all stuff that we have in writing. Eventually, get a writer once we get all of our all of our stuff, all of our history stuff together, and yours and Daddy's, and even like stuff from the kids, and you know, like I'd like to take this if we had time, and to edit and everything. There was so much going back and forth, you know, to go up and have Aunt Winnie tell stories that she remembers about you and stuff like that, you know. But that's, you know, that's a project. As much as we go back and forth, you know, it'll take a couple
Well,
years.
they're going to be coming out to California soon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Al has, when he gets business trips, she's going to start going out.
Oh, good. Good. All right. So now you're just getting married to Van.
Phoebe.
How old were you?
19.
Yeah. How many times is that on tape now? So, I know. I guess chronologically, we go from that to your first child. How long was it before you had Adrian?
A couple of years. It was
2 years.
20. Well, I got married in 43 and she was born in 45.
What did you do in between?
Went to Norfolk. He was stationed for a while in Norfolk, so we lived in Norfolk. And I lived with his brother's mother-in-law, who was a really nice lady, Mrs. Blassingen. She was a hard worker. She'd hurry up and clean the house and say, let's shop. We would go shopping. And I came home from Norfolk about a couple months before Adrian was born. I was staying with my mother. I think at that point he went on some kind of he was on a destroyer, went someplace to Africa or something. And then, he wasn't there when she was born.
So you guys were getting along pretty well and all before he went away? Having fun times? Then, now tell the story about delivering Adrian, all the crazy trips into the
really?
doctor and all. Yeah.
Well, I continued with the Navy doctors that I had in Norfolk, and I had to go to the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I don't know how many hours that was away, but
From Woolly Avenue.
Had to take a bus at the corner, go to the next town and take a train into Newark, change in Newark and take another subway car or path car. Then get to New York City and take a subway. And one day I went to the Bronx instead of Brooklyn, and all by myself. And then I went out to, I think I was nuts doing this. Then I took the subway out to Brooklyn, had to take a trolley out to the hospital. And that was a big, long trip. And quite often, because things were crowded.
That's just for one checkup? For one doctor visit?
Every time I went. And quite often, everything was so crowded. Nobody gave you a seat, and I'd be standing with my big belly hanging in some guy's face to embarrass him, and they still wouldn't get up. Let me see. So when it was time for Adrian to be born, my mother thought, well, she could just hire a taxi. Couldn't get a taxi. No driver wanted the responsibility. So Van's sister's husband lived about an hour away at the Jersey Shore, and he commuted to Newark every day. So I called. When it was time to go, I could tell I kept saying to my mother, how will I know? You'll know. My mother's favorite answers. You'll know. And every time I went in, I said, oh yeah, I think this is time to go. She was so exhausted. She had been peeling wallpaper off her room, so I couldn't wake her up. I hated to wake her up. So I waited too long, and I finally called Paul, and he drove up. His wife was a nurse, so she had the car filled with blankets and so forth.
And he's your brother-in-law?
He was my sister-in-law's husband, yeah. And my mother went with me. And the whole trip I thought I was going to push the bottom of the car out. I didn't want to tell this guy, hurry up and get me there. So she was born a couple of hours after I got to the hospital. But I had friends who would come visit me. It was a big, long trip to come out to see me. And then I got pneumonia. So I had to stay in 3 weeks, which was terrible. Came time, I had a high temperature, so when they came to take my temperature, I sucked on some ice cubes first, and then checking my temperature.
And we have our first caller. You're on the air. Yeah, hold on a minute, please.
Hello? Yes. Trudy who? Oh. Okay, how are you doing? Can you hold on? My son was taping me on video. Shut it off, Jeff. And she was thanking me for those. Our Lady of Knock is where there's an apparition where the Blessed Virgin appeared with St. Joseph and St. John. Daddy sort of poo-pooed. Wish he'd stop poo-pooing.
So you were saying that
Where were we?
you had pneumonia. You were in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. And I got home, and all my friends came over and helped take care of me. And at night when my mother worked, she was manager of an ice cream store, and they came over. I remember the first night I was nursing her in the hospital, and they gave me pork, sauerkraut, and applesauce.
In the hospital?
Can you believe that? And poor Adrian had such diarrhea, and every time I would try to change her, it was all alone. I kept crying because I couldn't stop the stuff that she had. Was really. So from then on, some of my girlfriends would come over at night and help take care of her.
Now, tell the story about how you sprung yourself.
Oh, from this. Well, I had bought a house in the town.
No, from the hospital. When you had
Oh, I put cool water in my mouth so my temperature wouldn't be high before they took my temperature.
Because it was such a miserable place.
No, it was Navy Hospital. It was gorgeous. Clean. Once a week, the captain came in with his white gloves. And
boy, no kid.
those nurses were scrubbing down the beds, and
Really good old days.
he would go into the bathrooms and smell the urinals and said, "This smells."
Sounds like Medanica. Tell me what you felt like about motherhood. Because you've had 6 kids. How did you feel before you had kids about having kids?
Well, I liked having children.
How about beforehand? Were you like anxiously looking forward to having kids and being a mother?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, as they came along, I thought 2 was a good number myself.
Like before you started having kids?
Yeah, even after I had them, I thought 2 was a good number. I thought 2 was a good number.
You overshot it by a little. Thank goodness. And it felt fulfilling.
Yeah, I
As
enjoyed
you started
it.
having kids, you know.
Enjoyed doing that. It was full time. All my friends had little kids. We'd meet and walk with our baby carriages and walk every day. Life is simple.
Boy, that's unbelievable. And you were living with Adrian back on Woolly Avenue
Yeah.
with Grandma,
Mhm.
and Van was off at work.
Mhm.
Did he actually go?
He never saw
in any
action.
battles or-
No. He just went on the destroyer that went to Africa. I don't know what they were doing, but he got terribly sick. And apparently he was over a bunch of guys who were really resentful. This guy was sick the whole trip.
So you didn't carry a job or anything when you were at home? Did you get checks from the Navy or from government
Hardly
checks?
anything. It was very little. Very little.
So things must have been tight.
Well,
What was Grandma doing?
she was manager of an ice cream store. And when I was pregnant, every night she brought me home big things of ice cream. Or I'd take a walk down, which was probably 2 miles, store, and she'd give me malted milks with eggs in it. And cream to build me up.
Jeez.
Because I was only about 104 pounds when I got pregnant.
Wow.
Wow. Things changed.
Um, okay, so you're at home raising up Adrian. Any significant events?
No.
And then,
She was a real pretty baby. I remember everybody wanted me to enter into a contest for Miss Union Baby or something. A photographer saw me one day and took a picture and put it in the paper because you're so cute.
now, how many years later
Billy?
comes Bill?
48. So she was 3 when he was born. And by that time, I don't know whether my mother had made the house into a 2-family or not by then. But she had made the house into a 2-family house. So she and Winnie lived upstairs and I lived downstairs. Yeah, I guess she did. She made it pretty much after the war. Got that going. And
So after the war was over and Adrian Billy's father came home, then you had Bill. He came home for good. He was discharged.
yeah, before Billy was born, he went to work at one of these jobs where you get paid, government paid part of it. I don't know. Didn't make much money. He worked in New York, but he went to NYU at night. Got an education. But I can remember when Billy was like 2 weeks old, and I was nursing him, and he cried and he cried and he cried. I shouldn't put this on tape, Billy. Because he told me to go nurse the baby, and I said I just did. And he took and threw me out of bed, and took a belt and was going to hit me, and I guess my sister or my mother heard the commotion, came down, threatened to hit my mother with the belt. She said, "I'll lay you dead at my feet, you." So that's when our problems sort of started.
Why do you suppose?
And finally, my mother said, "You've got to leave here. I can't." So we went and got our own house.
You moved out of that house?
We bought a house here in South Blanford. Because he had a terrible temper. What I had thought when I was young was his independence was his terrible temper.
Mm.
And our personalities clashed because I could get a terrible temper too.
Yeah. Why do you think, was he under a lot of tension, or was your relationship, now that he's back and living together, you guys just...
I don't know, he just didn't want to hear a crying baby.
So now that the house where you moved back into eventually, you moved out of, where we lived on Willie Avenue, was it the same house or a different
It was
house?
the same house. It was my mother's house.
So Grandma moved out and bought a house in South Blanford. No, you guys moved out.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Grandma stayed upstairs.
Okay.
And, or she moved downstairs and rented out upstairs, I guess, when we bought another house. And we moved out to this town across from the Plainfield Country Club. Do you know where that is?
Mm-hmm.
It was a nice little community. And I got involved in, Adrian started school, and I got involved in a lot of PTA work. And they were organizing a League of Women Voters. I guess I asked the right questions at the organization meeting because they made me president of a provisional league. When I was way out of my league, because some of the women who were coming from other towns like Princeton to help us get it started wore their hair back in a bun and the flat shoes and heavy wool socks and things. But it was interesting, but I started to get so much mail through the state and so forth. It was really almost overwhelming. It took a lot of my time. Which eventually I got out because we separated. I had another pregnancy, and apparently I lost the fetus. I got very sick and had to go to the hospital. And
How old was Billy then?
Just 5. Must have been 3. Between 5. Anyway, it turned into. It's a very rare thing called a hydidiphone mole, which happens in every 10 million pregnancies. And afterwards, I had to take tests for cancer. And I remember our marriage really started to go downhill. He took the children to New York City at Christmas time and brought them back filthy. We were ready to go out to some